Hey everybody, it's good to be back. Sorry for the radio silence. And I forgot that I didn't have the damn thing muted. Thought I did. My bad. Let me undo that. Thought I did. My bad. All right, there it goes. Now everything. Had everything looking so pretty, and then did that. Rookie mistake. See, I'm rusty. It's been 2 weeks since the last live stream, 2 weeks since the last real video. Things in life get complicated. My mom's had some health setbacks. I think we're on top of it. We know what's going on. We know what the options are, and we've got a consult with a specialist this week, which will determine whether it's going to be steroid shots or surgery. I'm actually hoping for surgery, but it's just like I can't control my schedule. I'm out there like 2 to 4 hours in the morning. I'm out there 2 to 4 hours in the evening. In between, I'm trying to do everything else, including getting her groceries and contacting this doctor's office and this doctor's office and getting these prescriptions and then taking her to this doctor's appointment and all this. And I'm not complaining because it's what we do. It's just what we do. It's what we have to do. We all have done it, or many of you are going through similar things, or you will. Trust me, you will, unless you're just a heartless bastard. But if I can put on the pity hat for just a second, it's like you're training for a hurdles race. You're going to jump those hurdles, and you've been training, and you've been training, and the hurdles are always X high, and that's what you've trained for, and so you are going. You're at the starting line, and you're in your crouch, and they say, "On your mark," and then you notice that all the hurdles go up, and they say, "Set." And then behind each hurdle, a pit opens and it's full of alligators and sharks. And then they say, go. And then you realize that someone's tied your shoelaces together. And so all your training, it's hard to win. And then USPS has been totally crippled. And we're not going to be political. We don't do politics. But the funding cuts to the post office are really going to screw things up again, the way they did back in 2020. And stuff that used to get here in 2 days is getting here within a few weeks, maybe if you're lucky, or maybe it got lost and you got to file some papers and get it back. And I just can't get freaking parts for stuff that I'm like, okay, I just need this one last thing. I can finish this amp and I can have some work done and I can get paid. But no, that one part is just somewhere out there in the shipping ether. And I still do want to do like live streams that are mobile live streams, take you on tours in Memphis and stuff. And I've got a gimbal for my new iPhone, and I've got a variable ND filter, and I've got really groovy wireless mics to do everything perfectly, and I've got it all worked out. And the issue I have is that Verizon's 5G has been down for over a month in Memphis, Tennessee. They say it works because they still have pretty good download speeds, but their upload speeds are like 100 kilobytes or less consistently, which is not good if you don't know about that. But not only do I want to do the mobile live streams, but I have access to places that most tourists don't have access to. I can call Boo Mitchell and get us a tour of Royal Studios. I can get a behind the scenes at Sun. I can get a behind the scenes at the Stax Museum and the Stax Academy and interview people, and also go and do restaurants and say, hey, if you want good barbecue, don't go to Central, go here. This is where the real barbecue is. And I'm set up to do that. But to do it in a mobile live stream, I need the 5G. But it's been fun playing around with this stuff and learning how to make iPhones look less iPhone-y with actual frame rates and stuff. Let's see, I'll make sure it's ready. Get ready. Oh. So this is what I see when I do streams. Almost out of the starting like this. So this is my stuff. A big old light that makes me look a little less fugly. There are my monitors and big my screens. There you guys are. So I can see the Logic stuff at the top left, and I've got the loopback stuff down here, which feeds the Logic into Ecamm, and here's the Ecamm stream chat that I see that I answer in sequence, and down here is the Chrome version, which is the real time. So John Rayam and Richard Nagamitsu just asked questions or made comments that I will get to, because first I got to start up here at the beginning, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But this is why, if you ask a question and I haven't answered it yet, please don't ask it multiple times, because I might be here, and you're here, so you're 40 minutes away. And we'll get to I try to get to everything. Almost every question that gets asked in the first 2 hours gets answered. Sometimes I get through everything. Sometimes stuff asked in the third hour we just don't get to. But only ask it once. I will get to it in sequence. And I look forward to getting to all these questions. And down here's YouTube Studio telling me I have an excellent stream quality, how many people are here, and that now would be an excellent time to give you an ad. And I don't do that. The ads I will give you only during the intermission, when I walk away for 7 minutes at the top of each hour. If you're new to these chats, welcome. That's how I do things. So I do have ads, but I don't do the ads in the middle of everything else. And the crucial thing here, I don't know if you can see on the screen, I'm going to point at the screen right where the important bit here is where it says A is 1/45. That is the automatic shutter speed. And I've got this set to 24 frames per second. So that's as close as I can get to having this automatically at the correct shutter angle, so that I have motion blur, as opposed to iPhone crisp digital everything. If I change the variable ND filter, well, it's still staying there. That's good, because we're indoors. Outdoors, if I didn't have this variable ND filter, that setting would go like A would be 1/2000, and then all the motion would be really jerky and yucky. You can see the color balance shifting as I do all this. When I do the real live streams, I lock in the color balance. But I've learned that with the variable ND filter, I can leave all that stuff automatic and just adjust the white balance. Now, if I do this, it's going to be a little bit dark. So you got to find the right setting on the ND. And if I wanted to, I could dial in the circular polarizer here and get that glare off the screen. But we're going to go back to the regular camera for the rest of the chat. But I thought you guys might want to see what I see. And there's the MacBook there in clamshell, which makes it all possible. Behind the cup of coffee, which makes it all really possible. And Senor Quack there. Now, the weird thing about this is that I'll show this really fast. Let's see. Let me bring this up. Point it at me, and that's a nice view. Notice how orange my skin is. The iPhone always gets skin tones wrong. Let me see if I can fix that. Let's see if I point here. Indoor skin tones are always wrong. We'll see. It's hard to do this backwards there. Well, still didn't do it. It's really hard to get the skin tones correct on an iPhone. They lie and tell you it's the same, but it's really not. Anyway, enough of that. Let me put this away while I'm answering questions. This does really well with natural light. This thing's fantastic outdoors. Especially as I've learned to use the gimbal, which is fancy schmancy. Power that off. Hey, Yeatsy, Dustin, Emmett, everybody. Clivey from the Netherlands. I was just watching somebody feed Phil in Amsterdam, and Hoda. I never knew that Gouda cheese was actually Hoda cheese, but we try. Let's see. Once again, to those of you who are new to the chat, the first couple of questions that it pops up on my screen are not in the sequence that they were, in the order that they were asked. I have to get through those. and then they'll get back in the order that they were asked. But I can't second guess the program. Hey, PWT. I got that Michael Jackson song stuck in my head now, but I can't sing it because, then the whole thing gets blocked. And it's probably for the best. Thoughts on Fender with hum buzz that gets louder with volume but disappears when I touch the chassis with two hands. Plugging in guitar introduces feedback that gets worse with volume. You have a bad ground somewhere in your amp. It could be as simple as the grounding contacts, the shorting contacts on your input jacks are not clean, are not making physical contact with each other, or the jack is just not tight to the amp, because a lot of the crucial grounds at the input are made at the chassis right there by being physically tight. But since you have hum buzz that gets louder with volume but disappears when I touch the chassis, I suspect your chassis is not actually grounded through the power cable. It could be a bad power cable, could be a bad solder joint, could be some other ground which is bad in the amp. You need to take your amp to a tech because it's probably pretty simple to diagnose this. It could be a lot of things. I don't need to give you the whole laundry list here. It's not a scary thing as far as a repair bill goes. It is a scary thing as far as you have no protection right now from being electrocuted if the chassis is not truly grounded. And it's also not serving as a good shield. So your first thing you notice is it's noisy. But in addition to noisy, there's nothing there that will save you if something goes wrong inside the amp. And that's a very nice thing to have. Dan Brock went to a junk store with his wife this morning, digging through a miscellaneous bin of crap near the register, found one of those blue chip TAD 50 picks for $1. Nanny Boo Boo, well, very cool. I paid a little bit more than that for mine, but I really like it. Do you like yours? Let me know. What do you think? Especially for $1. It's an easy thing to love. Let's see. Arthur Highback. Hi, Arthur. Back, Arthur. On Marshalls with 6550s, it is commonly recommended to bias the 6550s as if it were a 25 watt tube instead of a, what are those things? They're 42 watts. Based on the idea that normally biased the 35 watt tube demands too much current from the HT winding and can damage the power transformer. I'm skeptical of this, but also want to avoid damaging a valuable Drake. What are my thoughts? If I have an amp with 6550s, I bias it for 6550s. That said, oops, I gotta turn this thing off without taking a whole bunch of junk photos, my mistake. I tend to bias a little on the cool side, but I'm looking at all the voltages and as they interact with each other. So I'm looking at the heater voltage. If it's an older amp, I don't want it to be running at 6.8 volts. I'm looking at the HT, I'm looking at the screen. I don't think the Drake's going to be messed up by running the output tubes hot. But you need to make sure you're not running the output tubes hot while the heater supply has gone up too much. So it's a whole bunch of balancing acts. But in general, I will tend to buy a 6550 amps a little bit on the cool side, 50 to 60% rather than pushing 70 or higher. Just because it's the nature of the 6550, it is essentially closer towards a 6L6 than an EL34. So a lot of the benefits the 6550 has, as far as a very defined full low end and kind of a more immediate attack, those all benefit from a cooler bias than a hotter bias, which makes them saturate, compress a bit more, and then you get kind of working against each other. Whereas 34s, I tend to bias 60 to 70% to bring out that compression, that mid-range behavior. And it's like what people talk about a 4558 chip in a tube screamer. Oh, the slew rate. Oh, it's a softer attack. It's very debatable in a 4558 because it's not the only thing in a pedal supply that makes it happen. But in the case of an EL34, it's a real thing. So if it was not clear, my answer is bias it as the tube that it is, while making sure that your screen voltage does not go too high for the tubes. That's less likely with 6550s, but some Marshalls have really high B pluses. And keep an eye on your heater voltage, because you don't want that to go crazy if it's like a 1970 amp or 74 amp, and all of a sudden you've got really hot heater voltages. You want that to be 6.6, 6.7 volts AC max. It's a rule of thumb. You can go higher than that without any damage, but it's like a logarithmic scale that this is okay and this is okay and that's really bad, but the difference between this and this is actually not that much. That's when it cascades. Hey, Christina Carducci. Let's see. You got two questions here. I'll try to do those and I'll get you Paul Johnson. Christina, 78 twin reverb. I pulled the middle two power tubes and used one speaker. Is that okay to do? Just 1 second. I cranked the volume master volume on 10 and used the tone knobs as volume knobs. Is that okay? Well, that's what the tone knobs do. They're essentially volume knobs for different frequencies. So it's fine to do what you're doing, but you are going to have your life is going to have the hardest time with it. Your amp is not going to enjoy it as much as other things, and it's not going to give you the best sound. But if you want to do it, it's okay. As to whether it's okay to pull two tubes and just use one speaker, it really depends on the speaker, because one speaker is getting the entire output, and some twins, if it has an older speaker, they weren't rated for that high. If you have like a 75 watt speaker, 65 watt speaker, sure. If you have a 40 watt speaker or 45 watt speaker, I would think that's probably going to shorten the life of that speaker just because it's going to have more heat. Other than that, it's fine. As far as the impedance mismatch and the tubes and the output transformer and the actual load, you're fine. Your second question was, how do I get a late 70s twin, I assume the same amp, to sound like a late 60s Marshall? I would like to play some Skynyrd and Allman Brothers. Can't play Grateful Dead all the time. I think between these two questions, because the real answer to your second question here is you cannot. They're not the same thing. You can use various pedals that give a Marshall-y sound into a clean Fender, in which case you'd run your Fender clean so that the pedal and the amp aren't arguing with each other. So on your twin, typically you'd want to run like treble between 6 and 4, mids between 8 and 4, bass between 6 and 3, depending on the room, and you use the preamp, keep the preamp for a clean sound, clean on the edge of breakup. Maybe that would max out at like a Jessica sound for the Allman Brothers or a Sweet Home Alabama kind of thing, and keep the master wherever you need it to be for the gig, and then use a pedal to get faux Marshall sounds. But the larger point I'm taking from your question is you may have the wrong amp for you. If you really want the Marshall sound, you need the Marshall, or at least a Vox, which is closer to sounding like one than a Fender Twin ever will be. A Fender Twin is like polar opposite. I mean, the true polar opposite of a Marshall would be either a JC120 or a Marshall Origin series. The exact opposite of what a Marshall should be. But the Twin's pretty far in that direction, so you may just have the wrong amp. But I would suggest that for the sounds you're getting specifically, I would look to run the amp clean, as loud as you need it to be, make it have a good clean sound for all the Blue Sky kind of stuff and the Jessica kind of stuff, and then use maybe a mild overdrive pedal for some of the Dickey kind of clean things, and then get a pedal that does the Marshall sound. And well, no, it won't sound like a Marshall. Your audience probably won't notice the difference, and your tubes and speaker will thank you. You also have a much better signal-to-noise ratio. Just got to jump back in here because in the corner of my eye I saw Dan Brock, who said, the guy who got the TAD50 for $1. Normally it's a $35 pick. I'm the guy who usually uses a 0.50 Tortex, so the blue chip feels really thick and stiff to me. That's what Dan said. But it's really smooth playing and full sounding. I'll have to get used to it. Well, I could not play with a 0.5 Tortex. That is just a flappy little thing. I was talking to, I'm going to take Christina's question off the screen for just a minute, then we'll get back to the questions in sequence. I was talking to a client the other day who wanted me to do a bunch of mods to his amp, and I talked to him, and I said, I'm not going to do those mods because he's been playing bass for like 30 years and just got into playing guitar. And he was setting his guitar amp, which was a good amp, the way he's used to setting his bass amp, which is totally wrong because there's a Mesa Strategy 400 with a very different preamp and power section behavior to more typical guitar amp. and he was using a really like a Fender medium or Fender thin pick, and he had never used a pick before. So his right hand was just all over the place, and he was plucking with a very thin pick, parallel to the string, not angling anything. Didn't know about all those tricks. And I said, I will be glad to talk to you in 6 months from now about working on your amp. But for right now, go spend $5 at your local music store and buy picks from like 0.6 through 2 millimeter and everything between. Get as many different thicknesses, as many different materials as you can, and try each one. And try, and if it's a standard pick with the pointy bit, and then roll it over, pick with the round shoulder, and pick parallel to the string, and then at a downward angle, and then at an upward angle. See what feels natural. Watch all the videos out there, all the channels, because you have not found your sound yet. And until you find your sound and what's consistent, and the pick that moves the bit of wire that excites the other wire in the pickup that eventually makes its way to the amp through the speaker, because we're playing speakers at the end of the day, until you have found the right way to start that process from your brain to the speaker to your ears, you don't need to spend $400 on amp mods. Go spend $5 on picks. So I'm glad that Dan is branching out. And Dan may come away from this and go right back to a 0.5 Tortex, and that's fine. But Dan, I would suggest go get the same thing. Get a whole bunch of pick thicknesses and different sizes. Of the thicker picks, and the TAD50 is like a point. It's like a 1.3 mil, I think. Anyway, you'll know more about yourself at the end of that process. Hey, Paul Johnson. A Nomad high gain amp, not Mesa. V1B has hiss, crackle, replace RP, RK, CK, grounded pin 7, change tube, no improvement, jumper past stage, and amp is quiet. VP1 and trace runs to heater 4 and 5 trace socket. Okay, let me think about this. I'm not familiar with the Nomad amps. If you have hiss and crackle, and you've, no offense, pretty much shotgunned all the parts in that stage, it could be the socket. It could be the circuit design, but that would usually just be like a lot of noise, not necessarily crackle. I'd have to see the entire circuit before I could give you a better, more targeted advice than that. I think you're doing everything that would be reasonable, especially if you bypass the stage and it's quiet at that point. The only thing that I'm not seeing here, and it may not apply because I don't know where it is in the circuit, is you've replaced the plate, the cathode resistors, you've replaced the cathode bypass cap, you've grounded up pin 7, etc. The only thing that I've not see here is that most triode stages, not all, most, have a capacitor attached to the plate connection that goes off to the next stage, and that might be the issue. It may be that the voltage on that plate is messing up that capacitor. That's the next thing I would check. I would do that before changing the tube socket because it's so easy to tempt that in. If you have any more information, put that in the stream. We'll revisit that, Paul. It's hard. It's like that old Carson routine where he would hold the envelope up to his head and answer, and then open it and find the question. I am not that skilled. Hey, Bill Avanda, they're making an anniversary Blues Junior. Yeah, it's just a money grab. Same shit, different day. Hey again, Bill. Yeah, you can use old RCA cables for your stereo if you can solder with them. Not all RCA cables are easy to solder. Depends on if it's like a plastic jacketed thing. Sometimes the wire inside was designed for crimping rather than soldering. It's especially in a molded cable thing, but you should be able to. It's a very simple thing. The only trick with the foot switch on a Fender is that You don't have the shield tied to the RCA jack that goes to the vibrato part of the switch. But there are a lot of aftermarket ones which are not overpriced, which have much better. I would not buy the Fender reissue thing with the white plastic on one side and the braid on the other. But if you go to amprepairparts.com, amprepairparts.com, and look at the reverb pedals, foot switches, they've got a whole bunch which have actual high quality molded right angle RCA cables. Those are really good and they cost a lot less than the Fender reissue one. Thanks, Stepford. I will check the mail. Beautiful thumbnail. Thank you. Well, that is about 3 months ago. I had a beautiful 75 Marshall come in, and we shipped it back, and shipped the amp in one box and all the tubes in another box. And of all the tubes in that box, FedEx managed to do that to those two tubes, and they actually honored the insurance and paid me the claim I made for those, and I had 2 new tubes sent to the owner, and everyone's happy in the end. But we got a nice thumbnail out of it, and they were really well wrapped, and we did everything right. But sometimes people just gonna break shit. Thanks, Adrian. Appreciate that. I was worried about my absence too. I've been really missing getting videos out, not only because it gives me a small amount of income, but it's an interest of mine. Cameras and videos and editing and lighting. It's all an interest of mine, and microphones and fun stuff. So this is my happy place, either doing this or working on the bench, or, when I have time, I make test videos. I'll do a video for a totally different setup and see how it works, and trying all kinds of stuff. If I had more money, I'd have like 50 lenses because they're awesome to play with. Paul Johnson says on the Nomad, I've never had an easier time finding the problem and a harder time solving it. Terrible PCB assembly. Well, yeah, I can relate to that. I've got that 68 custom deluxe reverb. Let me show you guys something. Make sure my pants don't fall down when I stand up. This thing is of the devil. People keep saying, when are you going to put part two up? And I'm like, I don't know. So I've got this little card I installed here. Can you see that? Move my hand. The lighting's tricky for this. I've got a little terminal strip there to do the Rob Robinette kind of thing there, and mix both channels without any noise. And I've got a whole bunch of shielded wire in here, replacing bad traces. The issue this amp has is on V4, the reverb recovery mix stage. As soon as I turn up the reverb pot at all, there's a terrible hum. I've changed the pot. I've changed all the components just like you're doing, Paul. I've cut traces, run shielded wire. The next thing I've got to do is cut the trace going to the input of the pot and run a wire to the cap on the other side. The only way to make that hum disappear is if I ground out the wiper of the pot, but not to any ground. I can't ground it to chassis. Then it hums. If I ground it to any of these grounds, it hums. It has to be grounded to this ground, the ground of this cathode right here, this cathode bypass cap. That's the only ground in the entire amp that will mute that hum. And I've got the output of this muted. So no signals coming into this stage except for the reverb return. And this stage, actually, if I disconnect the reverb part of the mixer by lifting one of these mix resistors, the 470K, the output of these two channels, dead quiet. The mixing works great. Both channels sound great. The vibratos on both channels. As soon as this reverb's up at all, there's a hum. Now, fortunately, I have a 65 reissue that was brought here. And so this is the same board in theory. They're using the same board on them. And the 65 won't have that hum. Most 68s don't have that hum. They have the hum from the bad mixing. I need to see if Fender made a change in the board design somehow, if there's a trace that's been moved. And it's, these things are so difficult to nail down sometimes because when you do a design and you're choosing where all the traces go, you know that, hey, if I move that trace a 32nd of an inch in the wrong direction, I'm going to have noise. So you keep that in mind. But that's one of 3,000 decisions you make in the process of laying out that board. But when you have someone else's design decisions and you have to go back and find the stupid needle in the stupid haystack, so I got to find that before I can finish this amp. Let me put this back over here. I never claim to be brilliant. I claim to be dogged. I never claim to know more than most. I claim to have made more mistakes than most, and I do the things which ended up not being mistakes. So, in this one, it's really weird. It's defying the laws of physics, Captain. That's a terrible. Oh my God, Martin, if you're there, I'm so sorry. It's so hard to go for my normal voice. Actually, this is not my normal voice. This is my, hey, I'm doing a broadcast voice to a Scots thing. But my normal voice is actually down here, which you probably had on the last live stream because I was so damn tired. But I tend to speak up in the higher part of my register for clarity and energy and all that, and so that I don't blow out people's speakers if they listen in the car. But it's hard to switch accents when you're not in your natural headspace. But Bill's buddy's 2x10 Music Man is really dark. He had it serviced, said all was good. Would I recommend brighter speakers? I would try it. Some external speakers, see if you like the sound. Speakers are like I said earlier, we play speakers. We think we're playing guitar. We think we're playing amps. We're playing speakers. Everything is a way to make the speaker move. And if the speaker is the wrong speaker, it fights everything else we do. So it's pretty easy to borrow another cab and hook up to it and see what you think. If all of a sudden it sounds better, even if it's not the ideal, then go down the speaker route. But if you plug it into 3 different cabs, 3 different kinds of speakers, and all of them sound dark, something's wrong with the amp. It doesn't matter if a scope said that everything is symmetrical. A symmetrical waveform on a scope is just part of the grand picture. There's also how does it feel to play. And some techs are just looking at the scope and saying, hey, it's not clipping weirdly, and so, okay, it must be working. Well, a lot of things work that suck, like Verizon. Actually, no, Verizon doesn't work. Anyway, full circle, yay. Do I get points for that? Tor has picked up his Bad Cat Era 30 on Tuesday, and he's blown away. This amp is a proverbial 1. Good. I like hearing that. I hope it lasts forever and never have any problems. Hey, John. Well, I just saw your 2 questions. It turns out I did not need to have the 1 meg in this circuit because the mix was previous. So I'm doing the mix right after V2B of each channel, V1B and V2B. When I do the final video on that amp that I just showed you, all will be clear. But sometimes you do want to bring down the level and the output. I ended up not wanting to, but that's not the problem with the hum and the reverb. So it's a good question. Well, the concept is sometimes you just have a little more gain in that section than you want, and you can use that as an attenuator. See, the issue is when you have just 2 mixed resistors, like you'll see in the final circuit, and they're earlier before the reverb split, you don't have the same resistance to ground at that point because you are going 220K resistors through a 3 meg resistor, through a 470K to a 220K in parallel with a 100K pot, so like 70K, something like that. And so that resistance to ground after the 220 resistors is very large. So you're not getting much of a voltage divider from that, and then a path to ground. But you are getting some reduction because you're mixing two things with 220K resistors. Whereas the input to the phase inverter, if you need to bring down gain a little bit at that point to get back to where you were, well, you've got the 220K feeding the input of the PI. Well, you can add a large resistor there to give just a slight bit if desired. So far, I've not wanted to on this amp. But it is a thing to keep in mind when you approach these things, because you are changing from just a pure mixer. I'm not saying this well. In the original amp, it's not just a mixer; it's a mixer which is also a voltage divider. And in the changed amp, you're removing or negating the function of that voltage divider. Yeah, you can play around with it. It can be. I just use 1 meg as an example. You can use a 2 meg. You can use a 10 meg if you want. Just whatever. Just if you just want to clean it up a little bit, that's a place you can do that. It cleans up the global output level, but it's not necessary. Let's see. Hey, David James, just came back from Memphis. You didn't say hi. And had a time. Saw Isaac Hayes' Cadillac at Stax, and the food was amazing. That Cadillac is a thing, man. Nothing explains 1974 more than the great big purple Cadillac with gold trim, spinning on a turntable, mind you, with white fur on the floor and the doors. And every time I think that, I'm like, man, what idiot chose white fur? You drop your Coke and it's just gone. It should have done like purple fur, so you could at least figure out where to clean up. Chef won't mind me saying that. The food was amazing. I'm glad. Tell me some of the best things you had while you were here, David. Hey, PWT, somebody has been watching Brad's channel. Thoughts on Fender octal sockets with recessed pins that don't make great contact or grip pins very well. Live with it, replace, or is there a fix? Well, I prefer when I have a bad socket, I change it out, because what is the goal of a socket? To give me an electrical connection and to give me a mechanical connection. And if it's not doing the mechanical connection well, and it's not doing the electrical connection well, why is it there? Now, balance that out with some collectors want everything to be original. So in that situation, I will try to retension them, and I will clean them, and I will make them a little bit better usually than they were. But they were, the stuff Fender was using that era was not nearly as good as the old stuff, and I will gladly change them out. In some amps, you can get a Belton octal socket in them. Most of the Fender chassis, the Belton socket's too wide. It's not the right choice. There are some phenolics that I like to get from CE Distribution. But whether it's the Belton or the phenolic, they are both much better quality sockets than what you'd find in the Fenders from the era you're describing. And they have good electromechanical properties. The electronics connect and they stay in place, and then you put a good Belton bear trap on there, and then it's just locked in place and it's solid. And since they're like $3-4 each, the wide-angle lens of the phone distorts your face. Yeah, I wish. Well, it's also that it's very close, and it's that lens is 24 millimeters, and it was right here. So in order for it to be me to look more natural, I have to be over here. But between the distortion of my face, where I look really weird and I'm orange, I think I look very presidential. I don't think that was the intent of Apple. But yeah, I wish this thing had a different lens on it. If I was doing this at 4K, I can do a 2x crop and shoot an equivalent of 48K, and that's great. But for when I'm doing the live streams and I'm at 1080, I've tried it. And it's you can see that it's not great at 1080 when it's doubled. But the 48 equivalent when zoomed, digital zoom is good at 4K. So if I were doing this if I'm doing this for a produce thing and I'm doing 4K log, I can do that, but I can do that in post as well. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of 24 millimeter lenses as the default. I've got this at 27 right now. Most of my live streams I do at 27. Let's see. That's about a 35, though I'm getting low. That's about a 50. I have to get farther away and shorter. And then that's, oops, wrong way. That's about a 75, 80. And again, if I were to tilt it up, it'll look great. But I don't want to be like the literal talking head, just the head talking at you. And I used to have it tilted up more, so that I did that. But I realized that you guys like looking at things like this. And so with the 27 mil at this angle, you can see all that stuff, and you can see stuff on my desk, and you can see the duck as necessary. By the way, just since I picked this thing up to make a point, hey Wes, hey Frank, I mentioned before 2 weeks ago that I just put on, 3 weeks ago I took the D'Addario XTs off because they did not last, and I put on the XSs, and I said they seem to be doing well. I need to get used to the slicker feel, almost not quite like flats. But after 3 weeks now, I can report that these XSs my sister's ex-husband. Sorry, I don't know why G minor made me think of that. You know, they're holding up really well, so I'm happy with that. I should have done. That was not planned. Can you tell? But the face sells it. You gotta get in there. Let's see. Yeah. But thanks for noticing that I look really ugly with the 24 mil. What's the amp I wish I could have kept for mine after service? I've had a lot of really nice amps in here. There's a 58 5E3 Deluxe that I did. That is actually one of the house amps over at Sun Studio. That's really nice. If you ever want to record over at Sun Studios, ask for the 58. And my buddy John Whittemore has got a 59 that sounds really great. That's the one that was used in the second video on the K-Line. That I think, well, I've had a lot of fantastic amps in here. There's a 69 high watt DR103 that I particularly was fond of, though I would never be able to play it at home. And that 62 AC15, about 6 years ago, I did a restoration of. We got a final video of me playing it with the SG. That thing was just perfect. You know, just like, hey, I wish I could get this response. Oh, you think it, and it happens. And not all 62 AC15s do that. Let's see. Hey, Daniel, had a crazy repair today. Marshall JCM 2000 TSL 601, no heater voltage, checked fuse, had continuity, checked voltage either side. It was missing on the outlet side. Very lucky find. I'm not a big fan of those amps, but they're not as bad as the 100s, the TSL and DSL 100s. But the JCM 2000s were not good choices. Oh man, I'm looking forward to getting to your replies, David. Hopefully you're still here when I get to your replies. Hey, Bash Coda Reptiles. Working on a deluxe Reaper reissue, and the power tubes are only drawing a couple milliamps of current. 120 hertz hum to only affected by adjusting the reverb knob. New tubes, new filter caps, replace blown screen grid resistors. Well, first thing I would check is make sure that you have good bias voltage at the grid of pin 5 of each output tube. Second thing, make sure what your heaters are, because that amp has got, in stock form, 2 heater balance resistors on the board. So even if the heater fuse were to be fine, you could still have a bad resistor there. I don't have enough information to tell you, but if it's only drawing a couple milliamps of current, it's possible that something in your power supply is way off. So do all these tests with the tubes out. Pull the output tubes. Check all your voltages. You should be fine powering it all the way up without output tubes, and it won't kill the caps or anything unless they're already bad. But you change the main filter cap. It's also if you only change the filter cap, you may have bad screens or something else. If you got the stock Illinois caps, IC caps, all bets are off. But make sure you have a healthy bias voltage. That should be anywhere from negative 35 to negative 50. And that amp also has diodes on the cathodes of the output tubes. So if those output tubes cathodes aren't tied to ground through the resistor and the diode, you're not going to have any current through them. So measure your screen grid resistors, measure the cathode resistors, measure the cathode, make sure the cathode diodes are working, and make sure you haven't messed up. I think the amp's I'm pretty sure the amp does have some flyback diodes on the plates. A lot of things to check, but do all that with the tubes out of the amp. And if everything's fine, then reintroduce the tubes. But also make sure that you don't have a situation where, like, when the amp's in standby, pin 5 of each output tube is like negative 47. And as soon as it comes out of standby, that goes down to like negative 20, in which case you have a leaky cap in your phase inverter output, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, Stepford, nah. You don't want to raise the caps for the filters. C15 and C22. Apparently some low pass filters. I don't recall the numbers, but there's no need to change any of the cap values on this C1. If anything, you might want to decrease some of the cathode bypass caps from 22 microfarad to like a 10 or a 4.7, but you're talking about increasing, and that's just not a thing. Not a thing in my world, at least. And that's the only world I know. Hey, Dale Boyle Music. He just installed a Creamback 65 in his Sir Ombre. It's awesome. It is. If he recalls, I'm a fan of the Creamback. Yeah, I love the Creamback 65. I don't like the 75 as much, but it's a good speaker. I think I love the very similar in many ways ET65 from Warehouse. I think that Alessandro G12 SC, whatever it's called, would also be a good choice in that. But as I said in my review of the Sir Ombre, I was surprised how much I liked the Celestion that John ships in that thing. And that's not a speaker that I've bonded with in other amps, but I thought it was a good pairing for the Ombre. But I think this Creamback 65 would be ideal. Tor, I'm glad that you have found your ideal amp combo. I hope they both work for you for a long time. My money's more on the Bad Cat than the Mesa, but hopefully I'm wrong. They'll both last forever. Whoa, hey TC, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. You followed my advice about a 2023 Fender 65 Deluxe for $1,000 basically. Order Neo Creambacks, Plexi, and Moxie pedal. Thanks for answering all your questions about amps. I'm very glad. Hey, I hope you enjoy that for a long time. Neo Creamback is the only Neo speaker that I've played that I really like. I find it a little bit bright, though I only had it for like a week. Maybe they chill a little bit in time with more playing time, but it is a very usable, good sounding speaker. Just a little more towards the crystalline. But that can be great for certain styles, especially with the Deluxe Reverb. But if someone said, you must use a Neo speaker, I'm like, okay, I'll use the Neo Creamback, please. So, and I would probably use it even with not at gunpoint. Am I even allowed to say things like that, or is my channel going to get taken down? I know that I got in trouble once. I got it resolved. It was background stuff. I had said something about shotgunning parts, and it got flagged. Context is so important these days. I guess it's always been important, but Dan Brock damaged the first joint of his index finger on his picking hand, so I can't squeeze picks tight when I play, but I can hold on to the .50 Tordex because it's so flexible. Hey, it's like the people say, the best camera is the one you've got. In this case, I've got two, so that's the best camera I've got. The best pick you have is the one that you can actually pick with. So if you end up using a .50, I won't say anything negative about you. Just make music, enjoy what you do. That's why we're all in this, hopefully. Except for Joe Bucci here. We're not sure what Joe's here for. He was going to put some fresh filter caps in his DSL 40Cs. They're pretty old. I'm against the noise. There's a big difference in 50-50 versus 50-50 and 32-32. Both are 500 volts. Any tone change. I imagine the DSL 40C has 50 plus 50. And you do not want to go to 32 plus 32 because you will have hum in your output, and you will have ghosting, and you will have a very big change in the overdrive behavior of the amp and the bass response to the amp. And while there are amps where it can be fun to play around with that, like a J1845, because they use both versions over the evolution of the model, a DSL 40C is not going to give you. There's not one of those, hey, I'm going to sound like 1966 tonal Nirvana situations. Just keep it to the design spec, and it's going to be fine just like that, and you'll know that it's going to work, and that if there's a problem, it's not that. So I would say just stick with the dual 50s. Thank you very much for the super chat, Joe. Hey, Martin. Welcome back. Any experience with Paul Revere era Super Champs? Cheers from the UK. Hey, Lovecrafty. I'm not a big fan of the Super Champs. I'm not a fan of the Super Champs. I'm not a fan of the Princeton recording, and I'm not a fan of any of the Rivera era, which is hard to say, Rivera era Fenders. Not because of Paul. Paul has some great designs. They were executed so poorly. That era has got like really cheap gray cardboard boards, circuit boards, like the stuff you might find inside the lining of a cheap baseball hat, and it makes the brim. Just really cheap stuff that soaks up water, coated in flux, really cheap components mounted in very bizarre ways, tons of excess ground loops, tons of switches that you don't need, and doodads and things, and just spaghetti. So Paul had some good designs, and the actual production of those designs was so bad. Avoid. If you have one and you love it, great, but don't seek one out, especially since there are so many better amps for the money. I can play a thicker pick, I'll just drop it a lot. Well, I gotta say, man, this special material that the blue chips are made of, this stuff just like, it's like Spider-Man. It gives me like Spider-Man grip. It wants to stay there. I'm not using any pressure. I could play, and it feels so good. That may or may not be your experience, though. Hey, Emmett, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to get some more amp questions. Hey, Cankersaurus, 69 Deluxe Reverb. Amp tremolo is just pop, pop, pop. Guitar signals unaffected. Speed control varies. Speed intensity has no effect. I've swapped out V4 and V5 and replaced the Roach. No change. Well, if you've replaced the Roach and the tremolo is just pop, pop, popping, speed control varies. The speed intensity has no effect. So you're not hearing the guitar. It sounds like you got a bad intensity pot. Either a bad intensity pot, or you got a bad solder joint connected to the intensity pot, which was going to be ground at one end, and the wiper goes to if you're looking at the amp inside, you're inside the amp, and down here are the tubes, and up here are the pots, and you're looking at from your perspective. This connection right here, this one's ground. This is the one where the wire goes to the wiper of the intensity pot, and the input of the intensity pot, pin 3, lug 3, goes to the place where the vibrato channel joins the mix resistor. You either have a bad solder joint there, a bad wire, or a bad pot. You can meter that lug of the across the 2 pins of the roach. Just let it run, and you should see that resistance varying as it pulses. It's easier to see if you have the speed slow, and if you're seeing that, opening and closing as far as resistance from 0 to whatever, 0 to whatever, 0 to whatever, then you know that the roach is working, in which case you've probably got a bad intensity pot. Let me know if that doesn't do the trick. It's an easy thing to check. The nice thing is that while the speed pot is a 3.3 meg or 3 meg reverse audio, which is really hard to get, technically, while the 50K reverse audio for the intensity is also a specialty thing, for a test purpose, you can use any 50K or 100K pot you have lying around and it'll work just fine. So you can leave that pot in the amp if you want and just move the wires or whatever you need to do. You don't have to order a pot, put it in there and find, oh, the old pot was okay after all. So, hey, TC, when I had an AC15, I connected a Weber attenuator by plugging into the extension cab jack, then going from attenuator to the second set of prongs on the speaker. Was that bad? Well, if you were running from the amp, from the extension jack to the Weber, then from the Weber to the second set of prongs on the speaker, while having the first set of prongs still attached to the internal connection of the AC15, yeah, that's not great. I'm not sure whether it would hurt anything, but I think it would just negate the point of the attenuator. Well, no, you're going to have a different impedance, maybe. It's not optimal. It's not to get the attenuation to work, you have to interrupt the normal path to the speaker. So you would disconnect the normal path to the speaker. If it's one of the AC15s where it's hardwired into the amp, you'd unplug the speaker quick connects, take them off so they can't touch anything else, then run the extension cab jack to the Weber, then Weber to the speakers. That would be your only connection to the speakers. But you probably didn't hurt anything. But you probably didn't get any of the benefit you're looking for. C-plate coupling replaced, ceramic and noisy when tapped. V1A feeds tone stack and pre-volume pot. Volume pot feeds 1B. I don't remember whether your problem was in V1A or V1B. I'm sorry, Paul. Man, it sounds like it's ceramic and noisy when tapped after you replaced it, or now. I need to. Hey, Paul, can you give me a synopsis of everything that you've done on that amp and what role it plays? Are we talking V1A or V1B? There's a lot of things it could be. And tell me what the pot values are in your tone stack, if they're before this stage. Sorry, it's just hard when I have little pieces of the puzzle. Yeah, TC, if you had the external jack and the speakers are hardwired, you're connecting back to those speakers, you're not getting any attenuation. Sorry, man. Probably didn't hurt anything. You shouldn't have any lag. I'm seeing everything. Any lag would be through your current connection to YouTube. Leave the stream, refresh, and then come back in, and you should be caught up. For those of you who don't know, on the screen, and it's going to depend on what device you're watching, on a computer or phone or whatever. It might depend on Android versus Mac or whatever. There's a little thing on the screen that says live and a little dot that'll catch you up. It may say like you're 15 seconds behind, or may show you current. Make sure you hit that, and so you'll be where we all are together. Because I've had streams I watched back, and I know that someone was replying like 20 minutes after everyone else because they were just for whatever reason were behind. Let's see. Ramalama Ding Dong. Vox was going to release a hand-wired head, but they bailed. I have an AC30 CH, the current head version. Do I think it's worth tweaking for longevity and tone improvement? And do I have time? It is. I don't right now. I will again. But a lot of the things I do on those for longevity and tone are not pressing concerns. It's not like a Hot Rod DeVille where if you don't do this within 2 years, burn will happen. I'm talking to make the amp last 30 years instead of 10 years. But that also means you have like a 5-year window before anything needs to be done. And other improvements I do are things that make it even better. If someone's shipping me an amp, I'm not going to just do this one little simple thing because it's not worth shipping the amp for that. I made it last longer and it sounds exactly the same here, have it back. I do things to make it more better because, if someone's going to ship me an amp, I want to justify the shipping cost. But there's no rush, so I will have time again, Ramalama Ding Dong. Now, one of the problems here, I'm not saying it's a problem with you, is that I know you as Ramalama Ding Dong. And what if I get an email and it's Jack Johnson at Yahoo 47, whatever, and I have no idea that it's Ramalama Ding Dong that we've ever spoken, and it's just one more faceless email out there. And for that reason, I'm going to make the time, hopefully later this month, to create an amp contact form on the website. Redo the website so it's just pretty much like, hey, if you want to know what we do, check out YouTube. But if you want service, fill out this form. So everything will come in with the same format, and it'll weed out the tire kickers because I can say, hey, here's minimum fees, blah blah, how the whole thing works. And I get a lot of tire kickers who are like, oh my god, I had no idea it was going to be so expensive. I thought it'd be like $50. I'm like, nope, $50 for me to think about it. But that will hopefully winnow out a lot of things and let me take more things because I'll be spending less time weeding through it's, man, just so, if you saw my inbox, so many terrible Chinese companies want me to demonstrate their products, and they're going to partner with me, or they even flat out offer to pay me to tell you guys about this great new whiz bang blah 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 bullshit thing. No. A, I'm not interested, and B, they can't afford me. Anyone else having audio lagging behind the video? All right, lag for you. Refresh twice. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let me check. Just a second. Talk. 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 Getting a big lag? Wow, that's crazy. Talk. That's weird, because this thing's been working so consistently for me. I know there's a big delay between when I say something and when I hear it back on the broadcast. But I think the lag should be gone now. Talk. Should be much better, and I will tweak that on as needed. But it's not the thing that was happening before. Sync is still off. Well, let's try this. All right, I need you guys to use your big brains here. I'm going to clap. You tell me if you see or hear it first. All right, just 1 second. I have control over such things, and I like these things to be right. I'm weird that way. Let's see. Try this. All right, I'm gonna close and reopen 2 audio things. Talk, talk, talk. How's this? Yeah, we're almost we're gonna have to get in the intermission after I get this fixed, but it's very frustrating when everything tells me that it's perfect. I mean, everything on my screen is telling me it's perfect, and it's been perfect for all these other streams. I see if I close this program, let's see one thing. All right, so fuck. Well, I can't see it right now, Josh. I'll see it in the playback. I want to get. See, I think the problem might be in Ecamm, but I'm not sure if I can close and reopen Ecamm without messing up the stream. I'm going to find out, though. I'm going to find out. So, just a second, I'm about to disappear. No, I can't. It won't let me do that. Was it good at the beginning of the stream today, and then it went off, got off? Alex241, please fuck off. It was good at the beginning with the same set of controls. I don't know what to do. It was so good. It's been so good for weeks. Same settings. I'm not sure. I just changed the. I moved the audio up by 4 frames, which is as much as I can move the audio in this program. Hopefully, it'll be better. Let's check it back when we get back from the intermission. We're going to do an intermission, an ad, and I'm going to watch this back and see how bad it is. So it may not be me, but it's frustrating. Let's see. coming in a bit early because this is pissing me off. Any better? Because everything looks perfect on this end. I'm within my ability to control things. I'm a perfectionist. So, sync no good. Remember how I started this stream talking about how every time you start the race, the hurdles go up? I'll check it back. I moved the audio up 4 frames. For the past 6 months, it was moving it back by 1 frame to offset. See, I've got most of you don't care. Most of you won't care or even understand what I'm talking about. Some of you will. I've got running this camera through an HDMI converter, and the HDMI conversion allows me to have high quality and all this stuff, but it involves a certain amount of delay of the video. Then I've got some real basic effects on in Logic for the voice, and that puts a delay on the audio, and that lets me have control of the sync. So I have done so many private tests with this kind of thing, and I watch them back at quarter speed and like, bam, right there at the moment of contact. Actually, wait till I go like that, get the full thing. I've had it so synced for so long, and it just goes away. Just goes away. It's not the plugins. I've restarted Logic twice on this and all the audio stuff, and the only thing I can't restart on this is the program I'm using to broadcast, because that would end the stream and I'd have to restart the whole thing and then lose everyone and all that stuff and lose all these questions people have asked. So sometimes it's just going to be a little kung fu. And it may, if I were to do this tomorrow, it may be perfect. Anyway, let's see. Working Player 53 saw a Tech 21 solid state amp a while ago with 2 channels, so I was wondering how are my experiences with amps from that brand, if you got any. They sound fine. They sound really good in a lot of ways. A lot of people have gigged with them for a long time, never had any problems. They are built kind of on the horrible side of things internally. I was very surprised the first time I saw inside one. I thought someone brought that to market. But as long as nothing goes wrong, they sound good and they serve a role. And if something does go wrong, they're relatively low voltage things because it's all solid state. So it's not like it's going to catch on fire. You may have a volume pot that doesn't work anymore until you get it resoldered. So, especially given what they go for used these days, it's no problem at all. And Emilio, I almost missed your question. Sorry. Any thoughts, comments, or experiences with the 90s Epiphone Electar Tube 30 made in Korea? One just came in for service. Pretty good shape. I have no experience with it, no thoughts of it, though I would not expect much. But I could be wrong. Have not been inside, seen inside, or even looked at the new AC-15 hand-wired. Every time they do a hand-wired version, that they promise that this time we got it right, and this time we mean it. And they always get things wrong. But they charge a lot more each time. Hey, Colby, I'm sorry I didn't see this until way too late. But I hate sync issues. Thank you very much, man. Want to fight, huh? Fight me. Have I ever had proper Canadian poutine? Well, I've not had it in Canada, but I've had it at places that styled themselves as Canadian-style restaurants, and I've had it up in the Northeast. And each time it tastes like French fries, which I'm not a big fan of, with typically jarred tasting gravy, which I'm not a fan of at all, with cheese curds, which I'm not a fan of. So I don't get the appeal. I like texture and flavor and variation, and it's just like, hey, this mushy thing with these mushy things with this mushy thing poured on top. And I'm a big fan of most things Canadian, but I'm not a big fan of poutine, and I'm not that big a fan of maple syrup, but that's not your fault. You didn't make the trees, you just exploit them. If you gave me Joni Mitchell and Rush and a lot of other wonderful things. And I'd love to visit someday. And I really, really want to go to Quebec City and Montreal. Really, really. I probably won't have any poutine while I'm there, but I mean, if you ever come down here, I'll take you to the Waffle House, get it smothered, covered, slathered, and every other option. You'll know what the things can taste like. And William Shatner. Very nice, David. It looks like you did it right. Banana pudding cooking. I'm hungry now. Very good. You've hit some of the high points, and yeah, Shangri-La is going to be on my tour. Don't think I've ever seen you use one in your repair videos, but it looks like I can see one on the bench behind you in the live chat. 300 recommendations, brand models, stay away from. Are you talking about? I don't see a previous thing, but I imagine you're referring to the meter. Okay, yeah. Oscilloscope, it does use up a lot of the characters. Yeah, I use it from time to time. It's been in videos from time to time, but in the description of all my videos for the past 2 years is a list of the things, including what that scope is, and I would recommend that particular model. Hey, Richard. Tremolo is concert reverb is not working. It is a model PR450, same as Pro Reverb. What tube is the tremolo tube? V5. I don't know what a PR448 is. It if it's a concert reverb is going to be the later one, so yeah, that's going to be V5. But that may or may not be the cause of that. If that's the Opto-Trem, I don't think I've had a concert reverb in. If I have, it's been a really long time. Four Ways is on my tour. Interstate won't be. Interstate is way too sweet. Good ribs, but the sauce is too sweet. I think Cozy Corner is better. Let's see. Pickup swap in a T-style guitar, and two wires are grounded on the volume pot going to the pickup cavities. Are these for grounding the shielding paint? Never seen this before. Are these wires needed? If they're going to the shielding, yeah, you want to ground the shielding. A lot of times you can just do it by slightly overlapping the shielding paint over the lip of the cavity, so the control plate screws go. The control plate contacts it. But it depends on how things are done. Sometimes people do wire from the plate to the shield just in case they ever got. If the screw came loose, you'd still have shielding. Hey, Brett. Very early 74 Super Bass. Amazing condition. Definitely caps. I've seen we could get some pyres in there for you. We can get the pyres and iskras and everything necessary. Very very worthwhile to pursue for restoration, and it should be 6550s if that's what it originally had. I have to look up and see if 74 originally had. I'm not quite sure if it should be 6550s or 34s. Either way, that is a fantastic amp, or has the potential to be a fantastic amp. There's no difference in sound between pyres and iskras and other resistors that are on the market, but if it's an intrinsically valuable amp and you can get the pyres and iskras and the period correct stuff, there's no reason not to. Just don't expect it to sound any different. Just looks the part. Ignoring price, would I get good results if I put 4 Celestion Blue speakers into a closed back 4x12 used with an AC15CH? I don't think that Blues do well in a closed back cab. I'm not a fan of that. I think that they're going to have a very different character, which is going to fight with their intrinsic character. I think there are speakers for closed back cabs, and there are speakers for open back cabs. And in my world, Alnico speakers, especially the Blues, are open back cab choices. Hey, did Amnesia bought a 7,300 watt basement, 100% original, no hiss, no hum, wax looks clean, 2 cauliflower filter caps. Where else to look for and replace? Best mods? No mods. No mods. As to everything else, that's literally every video in my vintage Fender playlist is the answer to that question. So we can sit here for the next 18 hours as I recap them all verbally, or you can watch them, but I can't sum up how to service a 73 basement here, but I've shown you an awful lot of that stuff again and again in detail with better sync. Also bought a 65 basement. Neener, huh? Well, the basement and the basement aren't as valuable today, working player, as the Deluxes and Vibraluxes and Princess are, because the market is going to the smaller amps. And a basement is a very loud, wonderful thing. Hey, thank you, Kenkersaurus. Did I miss your question earlier? I'm gonna make sure I didn't miss your question. I'm scrolling up. I don't see a Kenkersaurus. I don't remember a Kenkersaurus question. And I like to think that I would have remembered seeing Kenkersaurus, especially since you gave me a super chat. Okay, yours was the pop, pop, pop. Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to make you feel forgotten either. For some reason, Kenkersaurus didn't stick in my head. And you think it would. It's better than Kankelsaurus. She was my 4th grade math teacher. You don't have math teachers in 4th grade. Kind of ruined my own joke. 8th grade. Then it's funny. Hey, Holger Dog. 65's twin reverberation makes a very loud crackling popping noise when plugging into any input jack. All tubes are fine. Jacks and pots resoldered. I would clean the jacks. There's a contact point there on the jack where when you plug in, it opens up. And if that's dirty, you can get that thing. If it's not tight, that can be a problem. There's also a 1 meg resistor across that contact from the tip to ground, which is supposed to make that thing not pop at the moment that you plug and unplug. And on the 65 twin, I believe that's on the board as opposed to being on the jack. And on the 65, if that resistor is not good, the 1 meg resistor, you can have that problem. But I would start by just cleaning the jacks, making sure they're clean, which is exactly what Wes Chilton just said right beneath you, and so did Working Player 53. Thanks, Jan Swanson. Enjoy your Laney. I hope it's great. Let's see. See, now we're at the point where people tell me about the lag, but what I thought they were saying was that the video was like lagging, like stopping. I need you guys to help me be very specific. Say, hey, the audio sync is off, or like the audio is after the video. But you just tell me lag. Sometimes that's just the YouTube server, because I've had streams where people have said things like that, and everything's been fine on playback. But this is a case where the sync is wrong. Sync is different than lag. So I'm not criticizing you. I appreciate. I'm asking for your help in the future, so that when you tell me things, I will know them. Yeah, you won't know what your basement sounds like until you change out those filter caps. And can the 6G15 reverb unit be used as a boost? It could be. How can it be modded to be one or a better product? I'm thinking of making it my first amp kit build. I mean this nicely. Do not consider making any mods or changes to these things until you understand them. And I'm not criticizing you did. I really am not. Given the nature of your questions today, you you need to spend more time with them, get to know the circuits, get to understand the circuits. By the time you're ready to make a change to those circuits, you will already understand everything that you've been working with, what's in front of you. And I don't think you need to start making changes for the sake of changes. The reverb unit could do that, but there's a world of good sounding boost pedals on the market. You can buy them used for $50. And the reverb unit probably is not the right place to start. Let's see. Now we're at the sync issues. Everybody was kung fu fighting. It was a little bit frightening, wasn't it? Never replace just a few filter caps. You do all the electrolytic caps at once. All of them. All right, so the audio was way behind. Half a second, that's frustrating. And it wasn't Logic, which is what I thought it was before, because before we had a stream and I would switch sources for the guitar thing and it would go crazy, but that's not the case. And when it was doing that, when I would put on the headphones and listen to it in real time, I would hear the problem in real time. But when I put the headphones on and listen in real time, I didn't have that issue. I just had that very slight delay you always get by monitoring something after the processor, which is what this app is supposed to take into account when it does the offset. All right, let's see. Hey, dude, I'm glad it was fixed. It depends on how they did the standby. I wouldn't use a standby at all on that app until that thing is fully fixed. And you need to have them or a tech look at the video I posted about why that issue happens. But in the stock form where they're deriving the bias supply from the HT, and then any interruption to the center tap of the HT makes the bias voltage go way higher than the filter cap for the bias is rated for, it's a big issue. So I'm glad the amp sounds amazing other than that, but it's very common for people just to copy things without understanding, and you get all these builders copying Dumble, and I don't know that Dumble did the standby that way, or whether someone put it in a, no, Dumble never gave a schematic out. Maybe someone drew what was there and they misunderstood how the standby was actually done, and they did it as a center tap lift, and that's become received wisdom for people who clone Dumbles, because it's not like they buy a Dumble and look inside it. They just go off the same little hand-drawn things from 30 years ago on the internet. And then someone cleans it up and does it in Inkscape or something and it looks all professional. And then you have a professional looking mistake that people copy. I am using inputs delay compensation, Wes, but that means that the video gets delayed by X amount and the audio gets delayed by Y amount, and this program takes all that into account. So what is broadcast out into the world is not in sync with what I actually say and how I actually move, but it has been up to this point in sync for everyone watching. And it's like a 6-second delay between when I say something and you guys actually hear and see it. All right, now we're at the last break. Hey, Holger Dog, 79 Silverface Ultra Linear Twin Reverb has quite a distorted output at low volume. All new caps and tubes, speakers are fine. Any ideas? Does it mean that it distorts when you have it at low volume, or the output volume is low and distorted? If the output volume is low and distorted, you could have a bad phase inverter tube, or have the phase inverter circuit may not be working, or you have a problem with your negative feedback, or one of the tubes or one of the pairs of tubes is not fully functional even if the tubes are fine. if everything's fine until you turn the volume very low, are you doing that with the master volume or the channel volume? And that could be a bad pot. But I'd have to know more specifically. Let's see. Let's see. Trying to get to the next question. I had to, when I came back from break, and people were talking about the sync, which is good. Hey, D. Yamariv. I mentioned a few times about the cheap mica caps. I built a few amps for black, cheaper ones. Can I refresh them on how to identify the good ones? The crappy ones just say SM, silver mica. They're just generic. They say SM, and they often fail. Like, so common. And the good ones are going to say CDM for Cornell Dubilier. That's who actually makes the good ones. CDM, or if it says Sozo, because Sozo also makes some good ones. Way too expensive, but they make some. But the cheap ones just say SM on them. So it'd be like 500 SM. That's how you tell. And sometimes they're black, sometimes they're brown, sometimes they're orange, but they're just, or tan, but they'll just say SM, and those are not to be trusted. Like Wes said. Thank you, Arky. I appreciate that. I'm gonna, Arky Steven, I'm gonna get the sync back. Bothers me. Well, I don't want tinned gravy, Dustin, but I'm not a huge fan of fries. I've had what people consider truly excellent fries, and after about 3 bites, I'm done. It's kind of boring. Fries are not that great an idea. And, I want to go to Belgium, but I don't care about moules frites. I don't want mussels. I'm not a huge fan. Too fishy, and I don't want fries, and I just won't. I'm hoping I can avoid the national criticism of not liking frites, but I won't call them French frites in Belgium. There's a lot of food there I'm very much looking forward to, but not those. Yeah, most 2 amp owners don't know about biasing, and that's fine. Makes more money for people like me, right? That's the attitude. I'm especially. Apparently, I'm supposed to have that attitude when amps are poorly built and blow up. I'm supposed to say, "Great, more money for me," as opposed to saying, "Hey, people should know about this. People should know about that." So, I like mayo on fries as long as there's also copious amounts of black pepper, or even better in Portugal, some peri peri sauce. But I still get tired. I get tired of the fries more than the condiment. Though I don't care for ketchup, and I don't want. What was it that they do in Germany? The curry pepper, curry ketchup. No, 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 no. Hey, James, appreciate that. I do want to continue my recommendation series. It's just been very difficult. The market went nuts in 2019 and 2020. And so the amps that were X amount, some of them are way down here, and some are way up here, and it's so hard to keep up with it. And I've had X amount of time, and those videos take a long time to put together. I've started that video 3 times, and by the time I get all the research together for it, all the prices have changed. So I'm not quite sure how to approach it, but I want to very much. It's easy to do a video like that if you're just trying to get a video with that title to get those views and those clicks. I could do one in about 3 hours and probably get a couple 100,000 views in the first month, like I did on the last ones. If I was just going for that, that'd be great, but I wouldn't have good content in it. And I thought I was very pleased with the content of what I was able to put into the first 2 videos. And now I can't. By the time I've been thorough enough in my research, the market has changed so much that all my research is almost meaningless. And you also have to Once you get over $1,000, there's so many good ones and so many bad ones. It's really hard to be concise because I don't want to do a 3-hour video where I just talk and talk and talk. That's what these things are for. You got to edit it down, and it just takes a lot of time. And by that point, all the prices have changed again. Let's see. Hey, Derek, Colby Jack. Friend likes Vox AC30 Brad Paisley sounds. Looking at Dr. Z amps. Are there any good ones in either Vox or Dr. Z? Well, yeah, you can do the Z-Rack, which is what Paisley uses live, and you can get similar sounds like a Maz 38 in some ways. The Vox AC30C2X would be another great choice. All these things are very similar to each other. I have not tried the Z-Rack in person, but they're well built, and Brad certainly sounds good though. He uses old JMIs primarily in the studio. But if you want to sound like Brad Paisley, if you have the AC30 and you don't sound like Brad Paisley, it's not because you didn't get the Dr. Z. You could have the Dr. Z-Rack, and like some of the other models that Brad uses, and a really great sounding AC30, and be a good player and still not be able to play as well as Brad. Brad Paisley, it's people talk about tone is in the hands. Tone is in the hands, and those particular amps get out of the way of what Brad's trying to achieve. Like I said earlier, we're playing speakers, so all that stuff is working in a flow towards the sound and response that he needs to realize what's in his head with his fingers. If he plays the same thing into a twin, it's going to sound good, but it's not going to be the same. If he plays the same thing into Marshall, it's going to sound good, but it won't be the same thing. And if he plays the same thing into JC120, he's going to throw the guitar down in disgust because it doesn't do any of the things that he likes to do. Whereas for other people, they would find the Z-Rack useless and be very happy with the JC120. So this is not a judgment thing. This is a discernment thing. So I would look at Vox and Dr. Z. They're certainly the most consistent makers of the things that do that thing. I've heard mixed stories about Bad Cat getting much better in the last year or two. And earlier in the stream, someone was saying they just got a Bad Cat they love, and I hope that's fantastic. I hope theirs is really great, but I had some cautionary tales from some other techs that I know. You saying my content's getting stale, Richard? I do love me some Gordon Lightfoot, and I love the band, Katie Lang and SCTV. Yeah, I cannot take BTO though. Sorry, Lane Bro's okay if you like really beautiful music. Everything's bigger in Texas. Working player. I appreciate that, Arky Steve. It's very kind of you. Very much appreciated. Because coffee doesn't by itself, especially these days. When COVID hit, I stopped going to coffee shops, and I was trying to save money, and I like coffee a lot. And I tried all the coffee that's available, and I settled on the Maxwell House French Roast because it was more than good enough for my daily driver. It's like $6 for a thing, and now it's like $12 to $15 for a tub most of the time. It's crazy. And I chose it because it was cheap, and I could get it everywhere. So as soon as I decide that, price goes up, and it's hard to find the Maxwell House French Roast. So serves me right for trying to save money. I appreciate you, man. I'm ignoring Gooden's talk about Big Star and Rush because he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Thanks. Appreciate that very much, Alex. That's very kind of you. Ted, you don't want to say that, man. You don't want to say that thing, man. I have seen Alex Lifeson on stage with Paul Gilbert, and Paul Gilbert is a much more accomplished finger mover. much faster, much more intricate movements of fingers. But they weren't playing in a studio and they weren't playing in a small club. They were playing in a big arena. And everything that Paul Gilbert's finger movements did sounded like. And then it was Lifeson's turn because they were back and forthing. And Lifeson played a pinch harmonic on a bend and Heldon got vibrato. And in that environment, that one note, and it was the right fucking note, killed all the finger movement that, in his defense, Paul Gilbert was very young at the time. Paul Gilbert's doing amazing things now. He's a much more mature player. He still can do all the stuff, but he chooses not to. He's trying to play guitar with slide and everything the way a vocalist would sing. And 2025 Paul Gilbert, and that same situation of 1990 Paul Gilbert would be more like Lifeson chose to be in terms of saying, hey, here's the phrase that will carry you to the cheap seats and emotionally connect with people. And Lifeson's always had that, and Page has always had that. It doesn't matter that Page was never technically as gifted as Beck. Page could write a song and could arrange for everyone, and he had badass grooves. And there's nothing against Beck. It's just that, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to be a player of a specific instrument? Or are you trying to communicate emotions? And I think Alex, like Page, like George Harrison, like a lot of guys from, Hubert Sumlin was an emotion conveyor as opposed to a Paganini kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with either approach, just you can't judge them to be the same. Good night, Stepford. Good night, Vienna. Big Star is not a local band, Gooden. Big Star is one of the most influential bands of the past 40 years. Just didn't influence you. Hey, Amp Alternator, another DR Deluxe Reverb question. Yeah, the trim is doing the thumping things. They're fixed. Yeah, all right. Earlier I mentioned that, say this is the Roach. So you got, here are the pots and here are the tubes. You're looking down into the chassis and here's the Roach. You have a connection here and a connection here. But from your perspective, this one is the ground connection and this one goes off to the wiper of the intensity pot. And down here you've got the 10 meg and here you got the 100K and those are going to the plate. You put a 10 nanofarad or 22 nanofarad cap over here between the 10 meg connection and the ground connection. And at that point, you won't have ticking or thumping from the Roach directly. If you still have any thumping, you move all the wires around V5 away from the wires that are going to V4 and V6. And you will find often on V5A, some of those wires are just too close to something else and you move it and all the thumping goes away. And then you have to have a good ground connection as well, but that's usually just by cleaning the RCA jack. Hope you enjoy it. Actually, on the DR reissue, it's not an RCA jack for that. It's a foot switch jack, so that's probably not the problem there. What's my opinion of Fuchs amps? I think they're great. Andy does great amps. I'm not a fan of everything he does, but that's more in terms of he has some voicings that I would not find uses for, but other people do. They're well built, and he knows what the hell he's doing. Hey, Elliot Colburn, freelance audio repair tech for a couple of years here. If I wanted to pivot to a salaried audio circuit design style job, what I recommend to build a resume? I don't know, man. That's tough. Most places that are going to want to hire someone, you'd have to have a degree in electronics. Even if you were terrible at it, you'd have to have a degree. And if you don't have the degree in electronics, it doesn't matter how good you are at it, they're not going to even look at you. So if you've been doing freelance, but you have a degree, go for it. In which case you need to, if I really wanted a job, I would say, hey, here's a circuit board from this company's X product, And here's the one that I designed. That's two-thirds the price, two-thirds the size, and would reduce cost by 20% and offer these benefits. But I don't. I'm just doing for instances. Good, and just because you're unaware of their influence does not mean their influence is not real. Have ever been to New Orleans? Yeah, I've go to New Orleans enough that I'm not a tourist. It's just it's like the southernmost neighborhood that I frequent. I used to go there multiple times a year, and I know that city just about as well as I know Memphis. And yes, they do have fantastic food as soon as you get away from Bourbon Street. Hey, James, appreciate that. Any amp recommendations for someone who plays metal and punk rock? Any attenuator recommendations? I mostly play at home these days. Well, it depends on what your idea is. Steve Jones used Silverface Twins, and he with a Les Paul, and he sounded pretty good for punk since he basically invented it. He and the Ramones maybe. Well, I give that to the Kinks and the MC5, of course. But all those bands, the Ramones, the Kinks, MC5, they're all using different amps. So did Steve Jones and the Sex Pistols. So if you're looking for real punk, use the amp you have, and don't treat it very well, and don't view it as important, and just see what noise you get when you turn it all the way up. If you want to sound like Green Day, that's not sounding like punk. That's just sounding like a very produced record, in which case you want something totally different, in which case you're looking for more of a metal sound than you're pretending isn't a metal sound. Because the metal sound is very different than the punk sound. And then when you get to a metal, do you mean modern metal? Do you mean djent? Are you doing drop C? Or are you talking like Dokken? Are you talking Iron Maiden? Are you talking Priest? Are you talking Metallica? What is your metal? Is it Tool? Give me more information on what specific kinds of sounds you're looking for, James, and I can tell you some amps to look at. But in terms of punk, the amp you have, turn it up till it aggravates everyone around you, and then turn it up some more, and then you're punk. And that could be a Princeton with an aluminum dome speaker. Avoid the PRS MT15. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate that. I try. It's difficult when the world conspires against me in ways like, I don't know what the audio sync issue was. I don't know where we're at now. But I'm hoping I can get all this fixed. I'm pretty sure that if I were to close this and restart it right now, the audio would be ahead of the clap, and I'd have to move it back. I used to have it delayed by one frame to make everything line up. There's just no way of knowing. There's no earthly way of knowing. All right. Yeah. Marshall Major says, regarding loud ground buzz, folks should always check the plug wiring when buying a pre-owned amp. Amen, and pass the biscuits. I once bought a Metaltronics Blues 59 here in the UK. Ground pin had been disabled for a 2-amp rig. Yeah. And sometimes you get you get an amp where someone put it on the home style plug, where it's just, you get it at the hardware store, and it has screws, and in theory, hot goes here, neutral goes here, and ground goes here. In reality, it can be wired whichever way they chose. You can have the hot going to ground and all this kind of stuff. Or you could have things reversed, which doesn't always matter, but sometimes it really does. So, yeah, always inspect your power cable. Very good point, Marshall Major. Danielle Emberley watched the Matt Monastery Trio Birdland Club live stream last night. They have now posted on YouTube. Cool, I'll check that out later. The sound was exceptional. L5 with a Charlie Christian and a P90. Thank you, Danielle. I look forward to finding that. So Matt Monastery Trio. I'm gonna write that down real quick because I won't remember and I want to. I have a terrible short-term memory. Matt Monastery Trio, Birdland. I'll look that up today. Thank you. My opinion, are JJ's making a great EL34, and what would I recommend? They're making a good EL34 and a reliable EL34, specifically their EL34L. I don't think they're necessarily the best sounding one, but they're likely to make sound every time for a longer period of time. So, I wouldn't necessarily buy them when tracking my album project that I really cared. Everything had to be perfect. But, if I were just out there playing gigs and loading up into the van at 2 o'clock in the morning and, in different temperatures and hitting potholes and stuff, I might go for the JJs. They cost a little bit less and they're going to hold up. All right, James is playing mostly 90s metal, pop, punk, alt rock, Metallica, Green Day, Nirvana, Pixies, etc. All right, next question is what's your budget? Because I think you might be a candidate for some surprising amps, depending on your budget. Pop that in there, James, and I'll get to you since your first question was up here. I don't think I'm going to end up in a jazz coma. I'm in a Latino coma. I'll get a rumba coma. I sound like I was making a bad joke. But, maybe I need a merengue coma. That sounds good. It sounds like I ate too much pie. That would fit. Yeah, see, Big Star does in fact rule. People know this. You either love Big Star or you haven't heard Big Star. Hey, Amp Alternator. I didn't see your previous question. The new 65 Deluxe Reverb reissue makes a popping sound when turned off using standby switch. Thanks. Don't use a standby switch on the Deluxe Reverb. It does nothing of any good to you. Just keep it in play at all times. Use the power switch. Then you won't pop. That's the classic Dr. Hertz when I do this kind of thing. Standby switch is wholly cosmetic on that app. Does nothing good. And even if you want to use it, it's only used when powering the amp on. It's not used for powering the amp off. So you can just turn the amp off and then wait an hour for everything to discharge, 30 minutes for everything to discharge, and then you can put it back, flip the standby back down for the next time you power it on if you want to, but there's no point. You've got a tube rectifier. The standby contributes nothing of value in that amp. Yep, and everyone who bought that Velvet Underground record, Gooden, also bought Big Star. Well, I'm sorry that you're dead inside, Gooden. Some Big Star is absolute crap because Alex Chilton is a perverse human, or was a perverse human, and at the first hint of popularity, he decided to go the other direction. He kind of invented he was Kurt Cobain long before Kurt Cobain was Kurt Cobain. But when he wasn't trying to be too cool to be popular, he was just amazing. And as was Chris. You had two very different, crazy, talented people. And I mean, not only were they crazy talented, but they were talented and crazy. And I mean that in the loving way for both of them. Never got to know Chris. He died before I was out of elementary school, but I spent some time with Alex, and I say this lovingly, he was an absolute asshole to most people. But, we don't go to the record store to buy friends, Picasso was a piece of shit as well. But, I'm not comparing Alex to Picasso necessarily, but the artistic temperament does not always make for good bridge partners. There's a quote for you, Wes. If I don't have access to the filter cap terminals without pulling the board, can I discharge filter caps via the plates on either the preamp or power tubes? If so, should I pull the tube first? Yeah, you can make sure they have it powered off. Yeah, you can discharge using the plates. In fact, I would discharge. Make sure the amp's not in standby, so everything's connected. Discharge starting with the preamp plate. That way, it's going to be through the 100K resistor, probably on the preamp plate, and through whatever dropping resistors. So you won't have a sudden discharge. You'll have a slow, predictable discharge. And as it gets, you can watch it on the meter. Once it gets down a certain amount, you can move it to like the phase inverter plate. And once that gets down, you can move it to the other side of the plate of the resistor for the phase inverter plate. And so you're right there at the phase inverter node, and that'll drain things down. And so you're using the resistors that are already in the amp as your friend. Don't go straight to shorting out the plate on a output tube, because you're going to be pulling all that through the transformer by itself all at once. Don't pull the tube, because the tubes are probably going to be hot, and it won't hurt the tube draining voltage across it. I'm going to get the goddamn sink fixed before we do this next time. James says, I can afford the expensive ones, Mesa's, Marshall's, Friedman's, $3,500 to $4,000. Just wondering if I think they're well made or living off legacy. Mesa is living off their marketing. Marshall's living off their legacy. Friedman and Suhr are the places you want to go. SUHR. John Suhr did the amp that's called the Dookie amp that was used on by Green Day. That's John's mods on an old Marshall. And if you what you're looking to do, the Friedmans and the Suhrs are the best bets on the market. And since you're going specifically for the Green Day kind of thing, you might want to look at the PT100, the Pete Thorn 100 that Suhr makes, because it's got a really great clean channel as well. And for a lot of what you're talking about with Metallica, that does that. You can play Nirvana and Pixies through that, but they're not. Nirvana and Pixies would not have used those amps. Pixies is all JCM 800, just like Boggs standard JCM 800, but the Suhr will do that. Nirvana was back to the punk thing. You're like, hey, I'm going to use the world's worst amp and make sure you can hear exactly why it's the world's worst amp and be obnoxious with it. And I also got this cheap Japanese chorus to be even more obnoxious with it. Now, no one can afford that cheap Japanese chorus that no one ever wanted before. I'm not mocking or criticizing Nirvana. I'm laughing with him because it's funny. But Friedmans are great. Suhrs are great. One of those amps will float your boat. Marshall has not made anything since 1983 remotely worth having, and not in the same comparison. And Mesa has never made anything in the same category. If you were on a budget, use JCM 900 might do you good. But man, if you have the budget, get the Friedman or the Suhr, and go forth and prosper, or what the hell a metal guy does. All right, we are at the top of this. Actually, a little bit past the top of the second hour. We're going to do our next intermission, and then we'll get to Walt Working Player's comment on the Silver Jubilee circuit and see what we think about the Silver Jubilee. And we'll do that in a few minutes. Thank you. I've been told that when we come back from break, some people are surprised. And I'm trying not to shock anyone, so we're back. I said we're back! Heard that some people like the Silver Jubilee, but I have had no experience with that circuit. Well, I have, and it is one of the absolute best clean sounds that Marshall ever made, surprisingly. It is has two very distinct different overdrive sounds, but for live use, you can't really switch between them. It's like, hey, I'm in the studio. Here's my clean setup. Here's my crunch setup. Here's my lead setup in the studio. Live, the foot switching is options are terrible. And as far as the dirty sounds go, it really is just kind of putting a distortion pedal inside the amp. So you can get similar distortion sounds with any basic Marshall with a few different distortion pedal options that are on the market. But it was a cool thing, and Slash used them, so, you know. You didn't hear the whisper, sorry? I thought you'd hear the whisper first. I thought it would come across more as the joke it was intended. But if I scared you, sorry, not sorry. Let's see. Finding the IEC power cables I like. Often wonder if manufacturers give us the same. They're the same. They're the same power cables. Most amps don't have any significant current draw from the wall. You can use SVT, you can use SJT, but if you've got like some 1,000-watt bass amp, sure, be persnickety about it. If it's just a guitar amp, 100-watt amp, whatever, it's not pulling that much from the wall. Anything rated for 10 amps is fine. You can spend more money if you want to. The whole point about an IEC power cable is that it's replaceable. So it doesn't matter how good your cable is. If the drummer drops a cymbal on it, it's going to get messed up. You need to replace it. Someone drives a forklift over it and load it, and you get another one. Don't sweat it. Appreciate the super chat. I've already answered it, but I saw that you had some follow-ups. We'll get to those follow-ups. Thank you, James. Matthew Dunn, 77 Fender Champ, one of the green heater wires goes to ground and gets to the tube sockets to the ground plane. No twisted pairs. Seems like a bad idea. Any thoughts? It was a bad idea. It was a cost-saving idea. The Champ was always designed to be a budget student model. And if you want to undo all that and do a balanced heater supply where each side is connected to one side of the heater heater secondary, and just have the heater center tap either going to ground or making artificial center tap, it is better. But it is quite a bit more labor to do. And that's why they didn't do it on the Champ, which is kind of a shame because the Champ is also single-ended amp, so it's already prone to some hum that other amps are not, that a push-pull amp is not, which is literally almost any other Fender ever made. So yes, it is not a good idea, but it's a classic grandfathered-in bad idea. So, you know. Hey, Jeff Cat Buckeye, a bit tormented by buying a 5F1 or 5F2 clone. Not sure what nuances I would look at for buying an amp builder's clone. I would buy the Mojo Tone version and just skip all that. You're going to have a pretty well built amp that you know everything's going to work, and you're not going to be paying for anyone's snake oil or learning process. There's just a whole bunch of bad clone builders on the market, and unless you already know what to look for, it's hard to know what to look for. And I know what to look for, and I wouldn't buy any ones. I'd build my own if I wanted one. But Mojitone's got some out there right now. You can buy them pre-made from them, and they're going to get you 95% of the way there, and they're not going to catch on fire. And, you know, the next step up would be Victoria, maybe. I'm not sure if Victoria does a Champ or Princeton. Those are not models that I would personally care about because I find them too limited myself. I would rather go for the 5E3. Can I elaborate on the issues with the PRS MT15? Well, the PRS amps are weird. They have a few that are really good. Some of the early things like the Fillmore East amp that they did, that was a good amp. All the stuff that for David Grissom, the 15 and the 30, those are real good amps. And then they have everything else, which always have weird issues, and I would just avoid it. You know, there's a reason people have played Fender guitars and Gibson guitars and PRS guitars through Fender amps. Not a lot of people ever rocking the PRS amps or the Gibson amps. Now, there's some funky old Gibsons from about late 50s through very early 60s that are fantastic. Not always built that well, but they sound great. And like I said, there are a few really good standout PRS amps, but they have not done the same quality level with their amps as they have with their guitars. And I don't need to elaborate before this more. I've got some PRS amp videos up on the channel showing the systemic issues I see again and again. And maybe they'll fix them all. I'd love them to fix them all, but they have not yet, as far as I know. Let's see. Breakfast Buddy 5. Friedmans are not shit. Friedmans do not have PCB problems. If you'd rather buy a PV Valve King, you've never owned or worked with on a PV Valve King. I'm sorry, I don't know where you got that information. Maybe that crazy British guy has got the one video complaining about the PCB Friedman he bought, but that video is techs share that to laugh at it. I mean, it's a joke. Every tech I know who's seen that video said, "Can you believe this idiot?" If you don't understand what a PCB is, don't comment on it. Don't criticize the company for doing it. Dave makes great amps. Some of his great amps are hand-wired. Some of his great amps are PCB, so mere mortals like me can afford them. He doesn't put anything out on the market that's got a problem. He doesn't put anything on the market that's shit. And when he has had some issues in production he had a bad batch of filter caps from a supplier. He replaced all of them on his own dime. You know, you can't get better than that. Now, if I have a problem with Dave, I'll call Dave and say, "Dave, I got a problem with you." But I can honestly say in front of everyone, his stuff is great, and I've never made that call. I've never had to make that call. Now, whether you like the sound or not, that's subjective, and that's why there are a lot of different companies in the world. You can get a Friedman and say, "That's a good amp, but that's not the amp I'm looking for." You get a Suhr, you say, "That's a great amp, but it's not the great amp I'm looking for." And then you play a Germino and you say, "That's it." The next guy plays your Germino and says, "That's really good," but then he plays the Friedman that has more gain. You're like, "That's it." You know, that's why all these companies are making good things that are all slightly different. But the PV Valve King would not be on that list. Any alternative to a well-made Mason Mark series? Well, there is no such thing as a well-made Mason Mark series. A Mason Mark is either an amp which has had its diodes burn the board and has had the 400-volt caps leak, or has not yet, but will. There is no such thing as a well-made Mason Mark series. And yes, if you're looking to get the things out of one amp that the Mesa purports to do, the Suhr PT100 is that actual thing without the big marketing push behind it. Any recommendations for an attenuator? 100-watt heads in a bedroom equal cop. Side question for tone only. Do I like the AC15 or 30? Well, if you're going to get a lot out of your $10, aren't you, James? I don't blame you one bit. I would not worry about an attenuator with that price range. Get a reactive load. It's so much better than an attenuator for home use. You can get the Suhr reactive load for like $300. The reactive load with IRs for like $600. At the higher end, there's the Friedman, not Friedman. What's it called? And I think Wes even said what it's called. I can't remember the name of it. The Fryette. Thank you. The Fryette Power Station, and the Universal Audio aux box at the higher end of things, and down at the lower end of things, Fractal's got an IR. I think it's IR compatible reactive load for like $250, $300. All these are going to be better choices for home use than an attenuator, because attenuators involve heat, and these don't. And the reactive loads behave, from the amp's perspective, the way the amp behaves as if it's connected to a speaker rather than just a fixed resistor, which for reasons too complicated to get into right now, is not optimal. And now that there's so many good sounding and safe and well designed reactive loads on the market, at realistic price points from $300 to $1,200, there's no excuse to get like an old Marshall Power Break or other garbage like that. Side question for tone only: do I like the AC15 or 30? They're the same circuit with different amounts of tubes, slightly different voltages. You can get almost the same sounds out of either one. The 30 has the advantage of having two inputs per channel, high and low, so you have a little more flexibility there. And you can also jumper the channels with the 30, but the 30 is quite a bit louder and heavier and larger. But the core sound is the same, and I would probably choose the 15 for home use and the 30 for gigging if I had control over Judgment Day. Not because you can't gig with a 15, but because you have more air being moved, and a 2x12 sounds a little bit better than a 1x12. But the amp itself is almost the same. Just 1 second. I think my wife's locked out. Make it? Did you get in? Okay, I thought you were locked out. Sorry. She was not locked out. My plan was foiled. Mwahaha. She's out of town for the last 2 weeks, and so everything involving my mother and everything has fallen on my shoulders. And aside from all the romantic aspects, and aside from just missing my best friend, really has made me appreciate all the things that she's done. She's been such a great asset in all the health issues with my mother. She's gone out there and spent time with her and run errands and taking a big chunk of the load off my shoulders. And so I am both delighted to have her back as my lover and my wife, but also for selfish reasons. She lets me actually have a little bit of peace of mind and a little bit of time to do other things besides run errands all the time. So shout out to Nikki, even when she's not playing Coffee Fairy. Let's see. The Sir PT15 with IR would be a good home alternative. Yeah, that would be a great amp as well. Downside is if you don't know how to dial in a Mesa, you may have a tough time getting a great tone out of it immediately. Well, I have a lot of knowledge of Mesas, and it's hard to get a great tone out of a Mesa anyway, between the fact that the clean channel is noisier than the dirty channel, and certain amps always have hum because of the way they use the wrong half of a triode for certain things, and then the series parallel effects loops, and even those of us who know what we're doing find it difficult to get a great tone out of a Mesa. I've never managed it. I've gotten sounds out of Mesas that are kind of like a Soldano if you've never played a Soldano, but let's see. Yeah, absolutely, Sean. No sweat if you leave it hanging out the back of the van all the way past Brownsville. We were a few miles outside Brownsville in the desert when the IEC cable took hold. Let's see. Looking for the next question. Thanks, Merrill. Yeah, man. I hope to get to your basement very soon. Like I said at the beginning of the stream, I've just not been in charge of my own schedule, which is well, good. And how tall are you? I'm 6'2", and I've I fit in my VW Golf real well. Maybe you're just not flexible for shit. My scalp has never contacted the roof of the car, and I chose that car very specifically because I did fit in it, which is not the case with everything. What is my take on the Thomas Organ Tube Cambridge Reverb? It is the best Princeton Reverb copy anyone has ever made. It is essentially a Princeton Reverb made with EL84s rather, and it is a good amp. You need to beef up the screen grid resistors, and there's a choke resistor, which is like a 1 watt or 2 watt. It needs to be bumped up to 5 to 10 watts, and you need to make sure it's not near any wires. And the input circuit with the jacks being kind of outside the fully shielded part of the chassis, you got to often do a little bit of shielded wire to help that thing out. And good luck to you if you ever need to change out the bulb, because it takes a very strange special bulb. Two different kinds of bulb, one for standby, one for play. So it's finicky and weird, but it's a really good sounding amp. Hey, Super Pontes, I answered this earlier, but I have not checked one out. I would love for them to be great, but I'm not expecting much because I have so much experience of the new Vox hand-wired amp. We went back and looked at the 60s and we got it right this time. And then 5 years later, hey, remember that one we did before that we promised you was so great? Well, forget about that. We got a new one, and this time we got it right. It's Lucy with the football again and again. So, but I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for it to be fantastic. Yeah, don't get the AC10 or the AC4, but the 15 and the 30 are great. Hey, Aeroholic, I've heard good things about the two-note captor, but I've also heard that it changes the sound more in comparison to other things on the market. So, I'm based on what other people have said, but specific other people like Jason Tong. So for the price, I'd go with the Sur over the two-note. Car Skylarks are very nice, Colby. Let's see. Well, Gooden, I'm not talking about an 80s or 90s Golfs. Those are little bitty things. This thing's got a lot of room. We're the same height. You'd enjoy my car, but I won't let you drive it because you don't like big stars, so you don't get special treats. And the Golf Turbo I've got, it's about as fast as any car needs to be in American cities. If it went faster, I just would rarely get to use it, but I would be paying for the insurance and the tires constantly. So, I have heard Family Reserve by Lyle Lovett. Good, and I have heard, as far as I know, all Lyle Lovett. Us Lyle's got to stick together is my take on things. Though I have specific songs and periods of his that are my favorite. I've never heard any Lyle Lovett and disliked it. Let's see. AC15C1 for life, Jeff Cat Buckeye says. Well, it's not a bad choice. Hey, Anthony Watt. Good morning to you, Anthony. He's got an unlabeled 10 watt single-loaded output transformer with 3 output taps. My markings of ohms have worn off. Any suggestions to determine load of each tap? Yeah, you gotta put AC onto the secondary and then measure the AC that's present between each primary, and then you get a sense of the ratio. You can there are websites out there that have the calculators, and so if you put in 3 volts AC and you get X amount AC on the other secondary, then you can figure out what the turns ratio is, and you can figure out 8 and 4 and all that stuff. but I don't have all that stuff floating around in my head enough to be able to say, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's what you do. I look that stuff up as I need to as well. And you can use a Variac for that. You have to make sure you're doing, because you don't want to give that thing a ton of voltage. It's only a little 10 watt SC transformer, but give it 1 to 3 volts AC on the secondary, and then measure what you get on the primary, and make sure you don't touch things aren't going to short out, and help you identify what you got and what your secondaries are. Hopefully that makes sense. Lyle does love it. That's right, Wes. All right, and we're getting into the real deal here. Merrill says, serious question. Tony Cheshire versus Zatarain's versus Slap Your Mama doing a drunk chicken. I have never tried Slap Your Mama. And Zatarain's, I don't know, man, that company is a bit weird. Their mustard is so good. But then they have all these things in the frozen food section that are just so bad. It's like they've been buying their own marketing. They've been sampling their own supply. So if I were doing that, I would just get a whole bunch of Zatarain's Creole mustard and some olive oil and a shitload of garlic, and mash all that up together, and with a lot of fresh black pepper. You don't need to add any salt because the Zatarain's mustard's really salty. And slather that inside and out on the chicken, and do that over a very low, put it on the grill on indirect heat with a pan underneath it with some wood chips and a little bit of beer, and let that go real low and slow. So it's getting the smoke from the side, and it's going to cook, but it's not going to be over direct heat. And at the very end, then you add a few more coals, or maybe start another bucket, then add it in there, and then get a little bit of the browning and the char as needed at the very end, because you don't want to burn the garlic and all the mustard and stuff, or have the olive oil drip down and flame up. And that would probably taste a lot better than doing just a dry rub. But of the dry rubs, I'd go Cheshire, Cacheray, whatever. But chicken benefits from a bit of extra flavor. So I would do the olive oil, Creole mustard, Zatarain's, garlic, black pepper, and really coat the inside and outside of the chicken and let it marinate in that stuff at least an hour. I would try to do overnight, and then you do that over the indirect heat with charcoal or wood, and you're going to have something fantastic at the end of it. Let's see, where were we? I've not had Slap Your Mama though. And given how I started the stream, I think that's inconsiderate of you, sir. Too soon. Garlic powder is a very useful thing, Diego. It's just misused as a shortcut by too many people. Just one of the things we like about Lyle. He understands how to degree in an agreeable fashion. I was raised that way, but I like to mess with folks' head a little sometimes. Well, fuck you, Gooden. I do not, and you're a poopy head for saying that I do. Oh, hey, Brad. Oh, hi, Mark. We are talking smoker cooking. Hey, Brad. Do I think Marshall still makes quality amps, just hasn't innovated much since the 80s, or the quality bad too? I think the quality went way downhill in 83 and then took a nosedive in the early 90s. I would there are late 80s Marshalls worth having. Avoid the split channel reverbs, but the early 900s up through like the SLX are okay. The Silver Jubilees are good. Not great, but good. And they have drawbacks, but they're really good. And the horizontal input 800s with a little TLC are good. After the JCM 900s, avoid. But as far as seeking out because it's truly great, 83 and earlier, or before 83, almost anything before 83, almost is good. But I would not pay that much for anything Marshall has made since about 1994, especially compared to what Friedman and Suhr are able to do in the same and lower price points. Oh man, gout, rich man's disease. I can't afford to have gout. I don't want to mess with you. I do want to strap you down and listen to make you listen to Big Star until you admit that you were wrong and I'm right. And it depends on which songs you hear. Some of them are just like, obviously, oh, okay, yeah, that's fucking brilliant. If you can hear Watch the Sunrise and then write off that band, then there's nothing further to talk about. We have nothing in common on this plane of existence. But I don't think you're that person. I think you just haven't heard the right Big Star. Because Big Star, like I said, is a lot like Nirvana. It's like they were on the verge of being really popular, so they self-sabotaged. So if you've heard the self-sabotage stuff, yeah, I get it. I'm not a big fan of paprika. No offense to my Hungarian peeps. I use it in barbecue rubs. It has its role there, but Bambule's got a spare triode 12x7 on a new build. Should I add an extra gain stage or parallel the top triode of the existing cascode, or change the existing cathodione to long tail? Any suggestions? I can't tell you that, man. I don't know what you're building. I can tell you that paralleling triodes is rarely that beneficial, but it might be in a cascode, because cascodes are weird. But then again, cascodes often benefit from having all that happening just within one tube, because if you split the top triode among two different tubes, you can introduce other issues. And I don't know how much gain you have, whether you need an extra gain stage. You could maybe use, and if you had two triodes, you could do an effects loop. But one triode, not so much. So I'd have to have your amp here, and I can't just say, as a general principle, always do this. But don't pick your nose in public. I can say that. Have I ever smoked someone's amp so bad it was almost not repairable? Well, yeah, once. That's why I started moving to indirect heat, where I put the coals on one side, I put the amp on the other. No, I've never burned someone's amp. I've never damaged someone's amp. I tend not to. Besides, they're so hard to get lit. And I am very sorry you're having those health issues, Gooden. You know that. Man, curry chicken pot pie. Sorry, Gooden. Yeah, enough about Gooden's foot. Let's talk about Wes's curry chicken pot pie. That sounds damn good. I'm really sorry to hear it, man. Hi, Tall Tim. Magnatone vibrato works great, then stops working. Places to look. Original Variacs, but they work. Well, I think you mean the varistors, but I'm glad that the varistors are working. Works great, then stops working. Places to look. That's usually a sign that either a tube is weak or something in the LFO is not being stable. So the oscillation starts, but it trickles out, cannot continue. So there's most. I'm not familiar with your Magnatone because I don't know which model it is, but most tremolos have the same approach to using an LFO, and they jumpstart the beginning of that by either applying negative voltage from the bias supply, the raw bias supply, or a ground reference to the cathode. So at the moment you switch that on, it gets jump started and goes. Otherwise, you have to wait for it naturally to build up its oscillation, which can take a few seconds. But what also happens is because you are jump starting it, it has an incentive to go. But if it cannot sustain that oscillation because of other things, then it jump starts and it works and then it fades off. It's like if your battery is not quite dead in your car will start. Well, say you have a bad alternator, your battery has charge and the car begins to start and then trickles off because the alternator is not working. So typically the issue is one of the three capacitors in your LFO, low frequency oscillation circuit. I don't know what they are in your particular magnetone. In a Fender, they're a 20 nanofarad, then a 10 nanofarad, then a 10 nanofarad. And the 20 nanofarad has a resistance to ground, usually through the intensity pot. And the first 10 has a resistance to ground, and the third 10 has resistance to ground, and also ties to the grid of the tube. And if any one of those capacitors is weak or failing, then the oscillation will start and then will trail off because it just can't self-sustain. So that's what I'd look at. I look at that. I look at the cathode resistors and measure all the resistances to ground where one cap meets the next in the LFO circuit. That's a very long-winded answer, but I think it's most likely to be the cause, the solution to your problem, or the cause of your problem. Maybe I'm the cause of your problem. I do not know, but I hope not to be. I do like the blues and gold, and I also like the Creamback 65 TC. I also like the ET65. A lot of good sounding speakers with the AC15. AC15 would sound good with G12C. AC15 would sound good with that Alessandro. AC15 sounds good with a G12H30. Pretty much any speaker that sounds good with a Fender or a Marshall will also sound good with an AC30 or AC15. It's just that the Celestion Blue is the most commonly heard, most commonly used pairing, but G12H30s also very common. Greenbacks are also very common. Veteran 30 would work. I think you might get a little bit of a spikiness around the 2K thing where that bump would meet the presence, the high-end circuit in that amp. But I think you're probably very happy with the Creamback 65. Almost every amp that you hear on my channel, if I don't have their speaker cabinet, if I just present the chassis, I'm testing with my shop cab. The top speaker, which is an ET65, that's where I put the Royer. So a lot of Voxes you've heard on this channel, but both reissue and originals from the 60s, you've heard through the ET65. And if I had two identical cabs, and two identical Royer R10s, and one cab had the ET65 and one had the Creamback 65, you'd hear a difference between them, but you wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's the ET65 and that's the Creamback 65. You say, wait a second, I'm here. I think I heard it. No, I kind of like the, no, well, that one's actually pretty good. It's, they're very, very similar speakers. They're slightly different from each other. That's great, but it's not kind of thing where like, oh, that's the Creamback and that's the Blue. They're really nice speakers. So if you like the sound you've ever heard of my channel when I'm using the test cab with the Voxes and all these things, you'd also like the Creamback 65. Thank you, Wes. Appreciate that. I will try not to do a video on shrimp or shellfish for you today, because that would be very shellfish of me, Gooden. Well, a lot of people like chicken pot pie with cornstarch. That's the thickener that they're used to. But I don't mind a good frozen chicken pot pie. It's just that most of the frozen pot pies that we grew up with were so terrible. And it's not the gravy. And it's not even that weirdly rubbery chicken that's in them. It's the weirdness of the carrots. Those little bright orange, perfect cubes of carrots that were so dehydrated. and they never quite come back. They always come back a little gummy, a little too hard in some ways and too soft in others. That's so strange. Those are the things that throw me off, and the potatoes aren't much better than those things. Like me, do you have challenges with your eyesight? Parts are small. If so, what do I do? I do. I very much do. I'm extremely nearsighted. Let's see. I can see this microphone. I can see what it says here, and that's what, a foot away from me, maybe 10 inches. Now I can only read it because I know what it says. I'm what, 18 inches? That's so. You might notice if you were watching me work on the apps that I will do most of my looking through my glasses, and then when I'm looking at something up close, I look over my glasses, which is one of the reasons I don't wear contacts very often, because when I have it backwards, when I'm wearing contacts, I can see all of this stuff just fine with contacts, but to read anything up close, I've got to have reading glasses, which means that I've got to look over the glass. I got to look. It's just backwards to how I do it without contacts, and so I get into bad habits. When we were in Europe and I'm wearing my contacts a lot of times so I can wear sunglasses, we get to restaurants and I don't necessarily have my reading glasses with me. I have to have Nikki read the menus to me, which is makes me feel very old, because otherwise I've got to hold them too far away. But without contacts, yeah, I can. Fortunately, I'm very nearsighted, which means I can get very close to a part and see it very well. But if I'm far away, sometimes I'll use the camera. Thoughts on Liam Neeson in Naked Gun reboot? At first, I thought, speaking of eyesight, I read that as thoughts on Neeson naked, and I thought, well, I don't know. I've never had thoughts of Liam Neeson naked before, but I guess now I am. And well, he's go Qui-Gon, but I don't care about Naked Gun reboots. I'm kind of sad that if Liam Neeson needs the money, because he's a real good actor when he's allowed to be. Again, not so much in Star Wars, but I didn't care for the Naked Gun movies. Other than OJ was hilarious. Oh, that OJ! But that is such a thing for Leslie Nielsen, that why do Leslie Nielsen's thing? It's like when Steve Martin, Steve Martin used to be hilarious. Steve Martin used to be great, but watching Steve Martin do the Pink Panther movies, no, no. That was Peter Sellers. It's not Steve Martin. Like if someone else were to be the jerk, I mean, imagine Brad as the jerk. Okay, that's not much of a stretch. But I need an Optograb. But I don't need an Optograb. All I need is my duck and this gimbal and this capo. I should end the stream here, shouldn't I? Oh, we got 9 more minutes. I got to come up with some more of a shtick. Flour and heavy cream will thicken it. I would do a beurre blanc myself, but it's a lot easier to do a cornstarch thing if you're doing a jillion frozen pies. Supposedly cherry juice is good for gout. Reminds me of that cherry liqueur in Portugal that everyone talked about as being so special, and we tried it and it just tastes like Vicks, cough syrup here in America, allegedly cherry flavored. What is my favorite 6v6 in the Deluxe Reverb? I don't have any favorite. I've had the best luck of current production 6v6s with Electro-Harmonixes. I've had some old Bendix that are very expensive these days that sounded better. Had old RCAs that sounded better. But those are very expensive, and if you find any that work. Of the currently available, current production ones, I've had the best luck, both in terms of sound and reliability and longevity with the Electro Harmonics. But I do make sure that the screen voltage is not nuking them and that the plate voltage is not too high. So sometimes I'll have a 66 deluxe reverb, and with modern wall voltages, it's just a punishing environment for 6v6s. So instead of using a GZ34 tube, I'll use a 5U4GB and get that 30 volt drop, which actually puts the plate and screen voltages with 120 volts wall voltage back down to where it would have been with 110, 114 volts wall voltage at the time the amp was released. So the 66 is still behaving like a 66 with modern tubes. The Electro Harmonics do just fine in that situation. Now, yes, there's a difference in certain aspects of how the amp plays and feels with a 5U4 GB versus a 5AR4 or GZ34. But the differences in attack or compression are much less than the differences between the amp working or the tube dying. So if the amp doesn't work because the tube died because the screens were at 460 volts, it doesn't sound very good on stage because it doesn't sound at all. So I'd rather have the screen voltage be at 410 with a 5U4 GB and have everyone hear what I sound like. And no one in the audience is ever going to say, you know what, that sounded really good, but I think he would have just had a little more immediate response, a little more snap if he had an RCA 5AR4. Don't you think, Brenda? And you should always ask Brenda. People named Brenda tend to know these things. Oh my God. We had chicken tonight too, Brad. It was awful. I don't understand the reboots. It's like, okay, yeah, or you could spend all those millions of dollars making a new story. The new phone books are here. The new phone books are here. That's right. Somebody really hates these cans. Working Player 53. Apparently, Mike's doing a comeback, but man, the Love Guru, no, ugh. Well, Wes, I think Brenda's that girl in that video holding the soldering iron by the hot end. And not the video, but the image that gets shared around live. Poor Brenda. Hey, James, not the SL68, though the PT model, the PT100. The SL68 is a fantastic amp, and if you can get a chance to play both of them back to back, you probably love both of them, and one of them will just be a little bit more what you're looking for. But if you get a chance to play a Friedman or a Suhr, and they don't give you the sound you're looking for, it ain't the amp. That's not a reflection on, it's not aimed at you. That's not a criticism of you, James. I'm just saying it's just the truth. If you're trying to do those styles of music and you can't get there with that, there's not an amp that will. What is an Amptech special purpose? Well, I'm still working on the Shinola and shit distinction. And see a doctor and get rid of it is also very important if you're an Amptech. Let's see. We got 4 more minutes. Let me get to the end if I can. I would avoid Engel and Diesel like the plague. They just waste your money. Waste your money. And at that price range, seriously, you should also look at, and I mean this quite seriously, for those styles of music, you could get a pretty nice rig with a fractal unit and a power amp and a fractal unit. They just with some FFR, full frequency, flat response monitors, powered monitors. You're talking $3,000-4,000, €4,000, while the Sir and the Friedman are going to give you the real deal. You might be very, very happy with what you can do for those kinds of styles of music with the fractal stuff. Look at my buddy Leon Todd's channel, Leon Todd, Todd. If you speak Australian, I think you'll like it. I wouldn't put 6L6s in deluxe reverb. Just heat up your power transformer for no reason. You won't get any really big. You won't get any big voltage. You won't get any wattage increase out of the amp because the bottleneck is the output transformer. You have a different feel, but not necessarily good. Class D is tricky because it often has a short lifespan, but you also get into the, low cost of ownership, low cost of replacement in a lot of times. So, and Brad, my care package from Emu Plains has arrived, and I appreciate you for sending that out to me. And next Marshall comes in that needs one, will be getting one, and I will sing your praises from the rooftops, or probably more from YouTube. I think more people would watch that than my neighbors outside. But plus, there's the whole thing. Nikki doesn't like it when I get up on the rooftop anymore, and especially when I bring the fiddle. Let's see. Yeah, you won't hear just between a 22 watt and a 30 watt amp. You almost hear the different. If you want to have a 22 watt amp be louder, or just get an extension cab, then you got a 22 watt with two 12-inch speakers instead of one. Well, it's all right, Brad. I like him dirty. Gringo walked in just the wrong time. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Brad, are you gonna do a stream today? You gonna ping pong over to Brad's channel, or is he not? More likely still in his unmentionables, wondering if he's gonna have coffee today or what. It's so fucking early in the morning there. It's amazing. Yeah, man, David James, you get a 1x12. I can't do another hour. I gotta go get stuff from my mom, man. I gotta do stuff, and I gotta restart all this and do some tests and see why it's out of sync today. Wes gotta dye his wife's hair. Hope she knows about it. That's it's one of those forgiveness versus permission things. See you guys next time.